Republican Congressman Adam Kinzinger of Illinois is joining us. He's a member of the Foreign Affairs Committee. Congressman, thanks so much for joining us. And as you know, the Treasury Department says it can't, in their words, lawfully fulfill this request to hand over President Trump's tax returns. This is likely to now go to the courts. But if the president has nothing to hide, why not release his tax returns and move on, as all American presidents have done, going back to the Watergate scandal of the 70s?
So look, I said from the beginning, the president should release his tax returns, but what we're talking about is something different now. This is now compelling the president to release his tax return, which is not a requirement of being president. Sure, it's been a tradition, but it's not a requirement. And now Ways and Means has basically said, we want this information. They did not provide a good reason for it. So it's not based on something specific. It's based on, I think, laws like 6103, which says that they can request tax information, but there also has to be a reason. So the Justice Department in their response, well, actually the Treasury Secretary in his response cited the Justice Department, saying that in fact they're not saying that there's a good reason for it. I honestly think, Wolf, the reason they want President Trump's tax return is to go through it and to try to further embarrass him. We have to file something every week on March 15th or May 15th, which is our Statement of Economic Interest. You can know everything I'm worth, every asset I hold and debt I hold. The president has done that also. And so this is just, I think, an example to further try to embarrass the president without a real reason to get these things.
It comes as the Trump administration, Congressman, has also missed today's deadline to provide the unredacted Mueller report to Congress. Does it bother you to see the power of the House of Representatives diminished in this way?
Well, I obviously think we are an equal branch of government, and we have a lot of rights that are equal or in some cases greater than what the president has. Now, here's the situation with the Mueller report. Chairman Nadler, from what I understand, has not even taken the opportunity to go see the less redacted version of the Mueller report. He's refused to do it. And what he wants to see is something completely unredacted, which in many cases, especially when you talk about underlying evidence like grand jury testimony, is supposed to be sacred and protected. So if Chairman Nadler wants to go and read the less redacted version and then say, hey, there's parts that are redacted that I think could say that somehow Trump colluded with Russia, that's one thing. But right now, it seems to me, and I'm always somebody that tries to be a fair arbiter of these things, but it seems to me like he's just trying to constantly move the goalpost. He wanted to see the report, then he wanted to see a less redacted. Now he wants to see no redactions. And fine, if he gets called in to see a no redacted report, what's next? Because it will be something.
It's unfolding, all of this, as the Secretary of State Mike Pompeo actually met with his Russian counterpart today. They met in Finland, delivered that the message that Russian meddling in the U.S. elections is not appropriate, that the U.S. will do everything it can to deter Russia. So how powerful is that message from Pompeo to Sergei Lavrov, the foreign minister, when President Trump refuses to say the same thing to Vladimir Putin?
Yeah, I think it's powerful. I wish the president would say that directly to Vladimir Putin. I've said that a number of times. I think one of the best things we can do to prevent Russian meddling is to expose it. So if you're on media, for instance, and you see a story that's completely unrealistic that was originated from RT, it's probably going to be fake news in an attempt to change an election outcome. So I think putting light on this is very important, but we have done a lot of things against the Russians when it comes to sanctions, lethal weapons to Ukraine, pushing back against them in Syria and other things. Yes, I wish the president would directly mention that to Vladimir Putin, but to somehow say that now all of a sudden he's accepting Russian meddling, I think is a bridge far.
The U.S. is now deploying an aircraft carrier battle group to deter what the U.S. is calling Iranian aggression. Now, you served in Iraq and Afghanistan. Were you surprised to see this announcement come from the president's national security advisor, John Bolton, as opposed to the Pentagon, which almost always is the one that describes the movement of U.S. aircraft carrier battle groups?
I think I was surprised by the fact that they have intelligence about this. I'm not necessarily surprised or disappointed that John Bolton did it, because I think part of the reason with his announcement is to make it very clear to the Iranians to not attack Americans, our allies, not to try to close the Straits of Hormuz or whatever this potential attack was. Keep in mind, a quarter of the Americans that died in the Iraq war were either directly or indirectly related to Iran. So I think in this case, moving the carrier group, being very clear clear that we will defend ourselves and our allies is probably the first and most important step to prevent that aggression in the first place. If you show weakness in that part of the world, they will exploit the weakness. If you show strength, which America can win any conflict it's in against Iran, I think it makes actually aggression from Iran less likely.
Congressman Kinzinger, thanks so much for joining us.
Anytime, Wolf.